to Interview Ninja Step 68. We're going to help Corben see beyond the boundaries of his life so far. We're going to try and develop his social intelligence. So we can do that by talking about how societies have evolved and the forces that manipulate cultures in different parts of the world. Why assumptions about behaviour and values can often be wrong when you look at them with a different perspective. And the importance in this modern world of having a global perspective, because countries have more and more people in them from different parts of the world, and also you may choose to go and live in a different country, short term or long term. As you go through your life, think ahead now about what kind of role you want to have in society. What type of person are you? What kind of work will make you happiest? Because it makes sense for you to go for interviews with the kind of organizations that are going to be suited to you.
Let's talk about, last time we talked about your time and where your time was going, if you remember.
I do indeed.
Sort of, we can show that, or you'll perhaps be getting that up on the screen thing.
Put it there.
Or something, yeah. And we looked at typically 1 week, and I asked you to look at the number of hours
Yes.
that you're spending on different things in your life.
And I sorted it like a maniac.
That's
Yeah.
why I found that interesting. You remember I talked to you about how computers and people have, well, people are obviously very advanced in their development, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. Computers, probably architecturally with computers, the last 50 or 60 years, I would say. But it's very interesting because if you think how people have evolved, particularly from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens, and I think we're in the Homo sapiens phase at the moment. So the Homo erectus was like, we evolved to the point that we could walk upright and do stuff, but we weren't like in this latest amazing phase where we have this thinking power and planning power, and especially being able to visualize beyond our immediate environment, to see more widely, and also to plan for our aspirations. I think the anthropologists will correct me, but I think all that stuff's, I don't know, last 100,000 years, 200,000 years, it's relatively recent.
I am seeding here the idea that Homo sapiens has superpowers that potentially enable us to go beyond mere survival. The power to imagine and the power to plan. We all have these powers, and a valuable soft skill is learning to use them in parallel to create and explore alternative scenarios. Later on, I will give Corben some template tools to help with scenario planning and strategic planning especially.
And I think for a while we were doing pretty well as a species. And for me, it right up through into the classical era, which I would say was 4,000 years ago. I reckon we were doing pretty well. We were getting our act together. I think the first civilized communities, first cities and places like that, townships, they came from about only 5,000 years ago. And then we got writing.
So you thought we were going pretty well until 4,000 years ago, did you say?
Kind of, yes. In that, as a species, we were very, very integrated with our environment. There was, people used to die out. Societies used to die out because of change. But generally speaking, as a species, the numbers weren't going crazy, and we were in harmony with the planet.
So why do you only think that up until 4,000 years ago?
Well, I think what happened was that our intellectual development and our ability to plan enabled us to start changing our environment on a massive scale. We also learned how to be healthier and how to, stop 3/4 of our children dying. And so, what's the relevance of this? Where am I going? Where am I?
Corben is at the beginning of his adult life. To help him develop his natural social intelligence and apply critical analytical thinking, he needs a sound foundation based on human nature plus a global perspective. To understand why different societies do things and make rules to control behavior, it helps to have a starting point. From there on, he can evaluate the different internal and external pressures as a social intelligence soft skill. I'm hoping he will learn to make balanced judgments and develop his own ethics and philosophy rather than just accept those of the people around him.
In the last 5,000 years, we started to have townships. I think the first one was called or something like that, in the general area that's now Mesopotamia, that sort of part of the world, sort of Turkey-ish and up. And then those ways of living turned into towns and cities. So Babylon is probably was a massive centre of pretty well everything. And I've talked to you about the story of Gilgamesh and stuff. As the first writings and these cuneiform tablets and so on. But what we were doing during that time was mankind was visualizing itself and its own journey. And we were forming societies and kind of building rules for the way we were going to live. One way or another, we gradually got out of sync with nature. The thinking process of what's important in life to a person changed. Do you remember we covered was it Maslow?
The triangle of motivation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you think of that triangle of motivation, society was almost like kept down pretty low in it.
1 and 2. Yeah.
That sort of level of survival and
safety. Yeah.
Safety, security of food, for example. Because once people start gathering in cities, it's, well, who's doing what in a city? You've got to have one person who's make sure everybody's got food, another group of people who make sure the water's okay, or another group of people who may be protecting that city from other cities. All these sorts of dynamics. The relevance to it is when you go traveling, as you are, you'll be going to certain touch points in that evolutionary story.
I don't mention it at this point, but as society evolves specialist roles, each with its own added value to the community, the mind-body-spirit dynamic starts to emerge. As far as Corben is concerned, I think his role will be more in the spirit space as a creative artist. He also has builder potential, the modern manifestation of which is as an entrepreneur. Thinking about mind, body, spirit, it's easy to waste a huge amount of time, but most of us have what's called a predilection into one part of that or not. Mind, if you're focused mostly on mind and enjoy thinking and so on, you may well become an academic. If your focus is in the body part of mind, body, spirit, then you're probably going to do something active and participate in society as an enabler and a facilitator. And finally, obviously, in the spirit part of it, you'll be about uplifting people's spirits generally, and there's so many roles where you can do.
So I think part of what you're going to Angkor Wat.
Yes.
In Cambodia.
Yes.
Okay. There's two really fascinating things that happen in Cambodia. One is the whole society of Angkor Wat was built in an ecological environment, and it's 10, 15, 20 square miles or whatever, and it's these structures, people getting together to build the structures. If you think about it, if you're a farmer growing crops, you're not going to want to bother to go and build a temple. Who's the temple for? So are you building it for some gods, or are you doing it because someone's paying you to do it, or are you doing it because you've got to do it?
And because you want to do it. Yeah. Well,
yeah, but why do you want to do it?
No, well, yes.
What's the payoff?
No, I'm aware of that, but just because.
Yeah, it needs and wants.
Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, what happened to Angkor Wat? Why did it suddenly fall into disrepair? Why did it get deserted? Was it conquered, or was it ecological change? Was it change of management, as it were?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I think it's because it grew too big to self-sustain.
Right. So how come it didn't just shrink?
I think the population grew to the point at which it was too populated for basically the growth got unmanageable because it was probably exponential, right? Because people were like, oh, check out this one temple. I'm assuming this is how it goes on. I have no idea. I haven't read anything. I'm just making it up now.
Yeah.
Probably one temple. Then they started. I know it's a massive complex of temples, right? A city of massive temples. So I imagine one was made with a certain amount of people, and then others, and it became a city. And then who was on the water and who was on the food and stuff like that started to get more and more fluid as more and more people came. And then I think, I don't know whether I saw this somewhere or whether I've just totally made this up, but I thought that they ran out of food and water, the irrigation systems and things for the people who were there. I don't know. Do you know? Yes.
Well, so think of that, your concept of what happened then, and then compare that to your first stops, Hong Kong. Is Hong Kong a modern Angkor Wat?
I guess it is. I guess in the sense that it's the world's biggest civilization.
What's sustaining Hong Kong now? What's the population density of Hong Kong now?
High.
Yeah, and you're also going to Vietnam.
Well, I guess the reason Angkor Wat collapsed is because the rate the population grew was faster than the rate at which the technology could keep up sustaining the population.
Interesting.
Whereas
if they got really good at canals like the Dutch.
Yeah, they would have been able to sustain more. And now in Hong Kong.
So there'd be a modern Angkor Wat would still be there. With a bunch of dams and dikes and pumps and windmills. And
maybe it's not just water, maybe it's food, maybe it's disease, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's healthcare. But if the technology had stayed on top of their population growth, then it would have been all right, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. But that's
so next thought.
Yeah.
There's a country called Myanmar or something, which used to be called Burma.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people in the north of that country that are called the Waringas or whatever. Sounds like a Mexican dance band, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are you up to speed with any of what's been happening there?
No.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
All right.
But I would be intrigued.
There is no reason why Corben or you have to know about world affairs. However, he is about to set off on a global tour, as we've called it, and he will meet other travellers who have broad interests. There's a general expectation that an educated adult will have at least a minimal awareness of national and global events. Without this, they may be disadvantaged by others, misjudging them as ignorant. In the modern world of work and business, it's important to have a global perspective, even if you're only working in a bookshop, for example, in a small town. You're going to meet people with broad interests, and you need to be able to interact with them, preferably as an educated person. Now, in some societies, ignorance is encouraged, and getting hold of accurate news can be very, very difficult, because the elite of those countries find it easier to manage people. The less they know, the easier they are to control. However, we're preparing Corben, and hopefully yourself, for a fulfilled life and going from good to great to excellent. So a broad awareness of what's going on, as long as you don't get it out of perspective, is important. In step 69, we're going to carry on with this kind of high-speed education of global social intelligence. By the way, you may have noticed I am deliberately vague about the names of countries and races of people and religions and political detail, because I don't want this to turn into a history lesson. I want it to be about society and why societies shape in the particular way they do. And if Corben finds a particular topic interesting, he's always got Wikipedia and so on to get the details.